All right, welcome everybody to the Five Reasons Sports Network. This is David Fernandez with you. I'm joined here today by Joe Frisaro, who you probably remember from covering the Marlins for MiLB.com for 18 seasons. He has started Man on Second, a spectacular baseball website, which has partnered here with Five Reasons Sports, and we have baseball covered for the state of Florida. And today, Joe and I are going to talk through mostly Marlins prospects here today, but we'll also touch a little bit on the Tampa Bay Rays organization going forward. So this is hopefully going to be a regular show, a regular prospects report for you to enjoy. Hey, Joe.
Yay, David! I'm really looking forward to this. You do obviously do great work, and yeah, David and I, for all the listeners, the Man on Second podcast, we're going to still do at least two a week with Mike and Eric. But David and I are going to do like he said, we're aiming for a good weekly prospects show. David's up in St. Augustine, right in the shadows of Jacksonville, so he's right there. I'm down here in South Florida. Jupiter's just a short drive up the road. And we're going to have you covered in it, and this should be a lot of fun. And David, let's start off right now as we kick the show. Oh, before we do it, let's do a little sponsoring thing. You see on the bottom, David kindly put the dugoutmugs.com/man-on-2nd. We've teamed up over here. They're great. Dave, you got your dugout mug yet? We got to get you some.
It is awesome. In the mail, Joe. It is in the mail.
Yeah, but they come out wood. This is the aluminum. I got Marlins. I got a Rays one. I'm going to grow a collection. Great outside. I'm a big barbecuer, David, if you didn't know that. And sit out there and you got something on the grill. Sit out there at your dugout mug and have a cold one as you're waiting for your food to cook. And speaking of cooking, the super hot pitching spot prospect the Marlins have up in Jacksonville. You saw him on opening day. And then on TV last night, we saw what he did, Max Meyer. Just your thoughts on, what you see of him.
Listen, he looks like the real deal. Max Meyer, I mean, he is knocking on the door. I do not know how much longer he's going to be in Jacksonville because his stuff, especially last night in Durham, his stuff is electric. He has, last night specifically, he went 5 perfect innings. No runs, no hits, no walks, nothing. He was mowing down those Durham Bulls, and it's not like, a scrub roster there in Durham. That's a team that won the AAA championship last season. They are one of the most successful AAA franchises, certainly in recent memory. And he just mowed through them for 5 perfect innings. He had 8 strikeouts yesterday. The location with his fastball was perfect. His changeup was really working. He was burying guys with the slider. He was really, really, really effective. I think yesterday he induced 12 whiffs, 12 swings and misses. In his first start, he did something similar. I think it was 13 swings and misses. The one concern yesterday was that he left the game in the 6th inning, warming up in the 6th inning. He was tossing the ball fine, and then he came up short on one of his throws, and it wasn't arm related. It was actually a calf cramp that we learned after the game was over. So he's fine now, but he exited the game through 5 innings. They didn't pull him or anything like that, but he's been really, really good so far.
Yeah, and just remind, Durham is Tampa Bay's AAA affiliate, to speak to just how talented they are. Yeah, Max Meyer is an exciting prospect, no doubt. And we got to see a lot of him in spring training, and even before the lockout ended. Remember, the Marlins had their developmental camp for minor leaguers not on the 40-man. The invited ones, and Max Meyer was up in Jupiter throwing late January, February. So he's hit the ground running, and he's impressed, and he's knocking on the door, as you say. The question we have, and I think it's one that the industry has, is we know that he's talented. We know the stuff is there, but we don't know, is he a starter profile or a reliever profile? Because I'm still hearing, and my eyes still say ultimately I see him as a reliever. I think in the big league level, we're going to see a combination of both. The Marlins have made it clear they think he's a starter, and they're grooming him as such. And starting pitching that is harder to find, obviously. Yeah. But just kind of your thoughts.
Yeah, so as you said, a lot of scouts profile Max Meyer ultimately as a reliever. I think some of that has to do with his size. I mean, he's maybe 6 feet tall. He's listed at 6 feet. He's 190 pounds, so he's not a huge, like, overpowering guy. His stuff is great. They didn't have the radar going last night in Durham, so we didn't have any velocity from him, but still, he was in the high 90s in the opening day start for Jacksonville last week. Ultimately, he's got two dynamite pitches, right? He's got this great popping fastball, which he locates really, really well, and then that slider, which might be the best slider in the entire system, counting all of the guys in the major leagues. So, he's working on his changeup. His changeup it looked good yesterday. If he's going to be a starter long-term, obviously he needs to develop more than just those two pitches. I know that he's working on the changeup. Who knows moving forward. And as you said, the organization, they're developing him as a starter. There's been no talk of him moving to the bullpen at any point. If the Marlins get it together here early on and can be competitive as we're moving through the summer, maybe the bullpen is where he has his initial run. If they call him up in the summer, that would be interesting. But certainly, as you said, definitely they're developing him as a starter. And if he can really sort of work on that changeup and make it a reliable pitch for him, then he probably could, be a very talented starter. He's done very, very well through the minors so far, so it's definitely something to watch. The Marlins have a plethora of starting pitching prospects, but he might be the best one.
Yeah, he's certainly up there. And he's one of the more unique talents I've seen because, like I said, I really like him. There's so much I like about him. I want him to prove me wrong and say, no, I'm a starter, because I see a young Craig Kimbrell, because that body type plays there, and I think he has the swing and miss slider and would be a really, effective 1 to 2 inning, pitcher. He could be kind of you can make him Kimbrell. He could be a little bit of a Josh Hader, meaning obviously Hader's left-handed, but he potentially gave you a 2-inning save, because he has that ability to go multiple innings. I also do not know how he responds to pitching back-to-back days. Does he one of those guys who takes a long time to warm up? So it's easier to say. I think they kind of made it clear that he's a starter, so they didn't put him in those situations, and you don't want to start messing with him. Right. But I will say this. I want to get your thoughts on this, David, because we saw what happened in the new CBA with service time.
Yeah.
And we've seen, Bobby Witt Jr.'s in the big leagues day one. I'm a little surprised with the Marlins for wanting to go for it this year. That they didn't take a prospect or two, whether it was Edward Cabrera, and I know he's dealing with a little bit of an injury, and you could probably speak to, we'll speak about Edward in a little bit as well. But I would have thought that something like that, you wanted to get off to a really good start. And to me, you have the opportunity, all teams do, but the Marlins especially, because they rely so much on what they're developing, to get their top type prospects and the closest to be big league ready on the opening day roster, certainly here early, to help you win from day one, because you don't have to factor in, like when Stanton was 20 years old, the Super 2 deadline ended like on June 4th or whatever, and they bring him up June 8th of 2010 to get Stanton in to get another year of control with him. I'm a little surprised they didn't have a plan for any of their top pitcher prospects to at least do that.
Yeah, I mean, the service time issue has been an issue for this team in the past. We've seen them manipulate service time before with some of their top prospects. And it does seem a little strange that this year really does feel like an all-in year. Well, I mean, mostly an all-in year. Maybe they would have done a little bit more in free agency if they were trying to win, right now.
Win the division. Yeah. If they were ready to really take that step.
But still, you're right. I mean, when you look at the roster, Max Meyer is certainly one of the top 40 men in the organization without question. And he's probably and almost certainly among the top 26, right, which is where the roster is going to be by the end of this month. And he's certainly among the top 13 pitchers that they have in the organization. Now, whether that is as a starter or a reliever, obviously time will tell. But it is interesting, and especially as you said with the new CBA and what's going on with service time, it is interesting that they didn't have one of those guys. And we know that Cabrera is dealing with some soreness and some injury issues. He had that late start to spring. But Meyer, he looks ready to go. Now, Jacksonville, they've started with a 6-man rotation this year. So they're being very, very cautious with innings and, with how often they're running these guys out there. They're being very cognizant of how many pitches these guys were throwing. And I know that Meyer was going to go out there yesterday for the 6th inning, but he had only thrown 53 pitches at that point. So he still had a little bit of room to go deeper into that ball game, but then he had the leg cramp. But it's going to be hard to envision the Marlins keeping Meyer off the roster if he continues to pitch the way that he's been pitching so far.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. And you make a good point. And I think, and this goes to the 6-man rotation. And there are several teams I would be a little surprised if they didn't do, especially when you have a 28-man roster, I think it is to start the year, to do a piggyback thing. Like you literally, if Max Meyer helps you win games in April, let's say it's, what's it today? We're getting close to, let's say the 20th, they want to bring him up and put him in a rotation. Even if for the big leagues, you want him to go 4, you could get, Castano, whatever, do 2 more innings, and then get you to the back of the game. You could piggyback. You can make it look a little bit like spring training. Somebody I heard on the radio today, I forgot which team, but they literally did that last night. They piggybacked 2 starters and
it sounds like something the Rays, Rays probably do, right?
Yeah, because you could use 2 starters to each go 3 1/3 or whatever.
Yeah.
If you can't get full to 4. And then you just know that those 2 are going that day because you have the extra depth anyway. Yeah. That I'm a little surprised that there wasn't some sort of plan to do that. I know development is and it's still, even though the rules change, I think old habits are hard to change. And I think that's kind of, they're still operating by the old rules. But he's fascinating. And either way, I love him in whatever role, but I think we want to see him helping. Helping, whether it's the 8th inning, the 9th inning, or starting a game. And I think he's tough enough and he's good enough that, I think we want to see it. Obviously, you're going to have to create a 40-man space for him when that day comes, but they should be able to do that.
Yeah.
And again, it's like you want to win, but do you? It's signs like that. Real fast on Cabrera.
I feel like that the piggyback idea is Eliezer Hernandez's destiny. I mean, he feels like somebody who would really excel in a role like that as a long reliever, or a short starter, and then Meyer comes in after that. I feel like that's the direction that he should ultimately go. And again, like you said, if they want to win and they want to win this season, Meyer can help them do that. And he's got the competitiveness and the toughness. It's just a matter of, can he develop a reliable third pitch at this point?
Yeah. And that's why I'm saying the shorter sample size,
yeah.
If he's 3 innings instead of a true starter,
sure.
And because that's the thing with Cabrera. And I know he's dealing a little bit with the biceps thing, but everyone's like, oh, well, he wasn't built up. Well, David, 80% of these pitchers in camp aren't built up.
No.
So Edward Cabrera is in the same category. He's one of your best 6, because Edward Cabrera's stuff is probably all the package is probably better than Max, so they're, and he's already on the 40-man. So they made no real concerted effort. To me, it's like, okay, you could have thrown him on the backfield. You could have, now granted, he's dealing with an issue. We hope that's not very long-term, but I think, let's put it this way. I think those 2, assuming Edward's okay, those 2 can make May. When we're doing this in May, it was going to be interesting. We could kind of chart this, and this is kind of the genesis. I think both of those guys could be playing big roles on the big league roster. So we'll talk about them as prospects now. But, probably the baby prospects are, one of them's in Pensacola, and he's going to have a birthday on Friday. What are you going to get Eury Perez for his birthday on Dave? What do you wish for him? Because he's going to turn all of 19.
Well, I'm going to get him a sandwich so that he kind of beefs up a little bit. I mean, that man needs to build some muscle but he's the real deal down there. 18 years old in Double-A. That hadn't been done, I don't know, in a 2 or 3 years at least. I think is what Baseball America said. I forget the exact year, but he's impressing some people. He's the number 4 prospect for the Marlins, number 41 overall in MLB pipeline. I mean, he's he could be, the gem. And like you said, he's turning 19 years old, so maybe a year or two away from the bigs still. But this starting pitching pipeline is
it's looking good.
It's looking good.
It's encouraging. It's looking good. I'm looking down at some notes, Dave, because I texted a scout friend of mine, a very veteran scout who's seen him, and just a quick thumbnail of what he told me. He said advanced, obviously, and he said with a more consistent delivery and a little more consistency with his velocity, within 2 to 3 years, he's going to be special in the big leagues. 95 to 98, I guess, is where he was sitting in game one. What impresses me every time I see him, David, because he's, you hear the Jose Fernandez comparisons, in terms of young and youth and everything.
Yeah.
Jose Fernandez, obviously, is a completely different level. I think Jose was, generational. I'm not sure Eury is. I don't want to necessarily put that expectation, because Jose Fernandez had basically 4 like 7th grade to 8th grade pitches at that age even. And his slider was so good right away. Fastball command, so good, all that stuff. So I don't really want to put that expectation on Eury. I think Eury, because he's so hard to hit, he's so long at 6'8", and like you say, he's very wiry. He just kind of comes at you. He could throw some really bad breaking stuff and get swings.
Yeah.
So, and then he could also plop a hittable breaking ball over the middle of the plate and get an awkward take. So his secondary stuff, I think he what I really like is he gets that fastball to both sides of the plate really well. And if you got fastball command, you're ahead of a lot of pitchers, because you know what you're doing, you know where the ball's going, and you're going to hit your spots. So that's those secondary pitches. And another thing, keep this in mind too, because he's so lanky, he doesn't get a lot of traffic, but the big league hitters are going to get on base against him. There's no doubt. No one pitches to a 0 ERA in the big leagues. What's that out of the stretch look like? Because I saw him on a backfield in spring training. The guy took him to the fence, and now he's on second base and he's throwing out of the stretch. I think he ended up getting out of the inning, but that's just because he could dominate that level of hitter. It wasn't as clean. The pitches, a lot more balls. So I wonder if, that aspect of his game, he's going to have to basically, I think they're going to almost have to force him to have traffic, whether it's simulated games, just to get him to get used to fielding a bunt or things like that, rather than just see, oh, there he went. And just, it's great what Max Meyer did last night, and Eury's capable of doing that in Double-A even, but you want to see how they deal in situations, because we hope he's that good in the big leagues, but again, I don't think he's the best pitcher that's ever worn a uniform. I mean, that would mean never having given up a run. So
yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say that about the traffic and stuff. I mean, the other night he went 4 1/3. He gave up 3 hits. He walked 2 guys. He didn't allow a hit though until the 4th inning. So he struck out 4 of the first 8 outs. The other night, and he was pulled ultimately in the 5th when he hit a guy. And then he gave up a single. So he had some traffic on the bases, and they ended up pulling him at that point. He was up to 77 pitches. So, probably hit the ceiling for his pitch count. But Will Stewart relieved him, and he ended up allowing the inherited runners to score. So, it kind of dinged Perez a little bit, 3 earned runs. But you want to see somebody like him, especially with his frame. How does he deal with that sort of traffic? Because it absolutely changes your delivery, which is what makes him so dynamic right now. When there's nobody on, that delivery is what really almost puts him over the edge in terms of being a prospect and stuff. But I mean, we'll see how that develops. 19 years old, he's going to be in the minors for at least another year or two. So,
yeah, you don't want to, yeah, he's getting super close, but you still want to be very careful, because there is the temptation. And I heard on the broadcast from Pensacola, I think they said even all year that about 75 pitches is where Eury's going to be. So
that makes sense.
So that's kind of the plan. Obviously, they're going to be very careful with him. And there's another kid turning 19 on Saturday. He's with the Hammerheads in low A ball, the number 1 pick last year. The guy I'm completely in love. I think the kid's the best prospect they got in their system, which really says something. Kahlil Watson turns 19. You just kind of your thoughts.
he's not going to be in Jupiter for long.
Yeah.
I mean, he's electric too. I mean, like, can you imagine a middle infield of Jazz Chisholm and Kahlil Watson?
Yeah.
That's something that'll be a lot of fun to watch. I mean, he's played 4 games now, 5 for 15 to start the year, a couple homers, couple doubles. He's got 5 RBIs. He's got 5 runs scored. You know, he looks great. He looks dynamic. That bat speed. I mean, he crushed one the other night. I know he was pulled from one of those games.
Yeah,
early.
he was pulled. I heard he didn't run. And I get it. You want to kind of send a message to, it's not the end of the world. You know, it's like he's a kid and he was mad at himself and he didn't run. And, you know, you want to, as an organization, kind of do it the right way. But, you know, so they kind of hopefully nip it in the bud that he doesn't do that. Yeah. But I'll tell you this, I'm not old school to the point where, oh my gosh, you got to run super hard, because a lot of that, I don't want him blowing a hammy out, you know, when he's out easily. Obviously, you want to give effort and so forth. And he's a kid. He's young. He's super young. And like you say, you know, you mentioned Jazz. His finish looks like Jazz. If you look at that, that long, that kind of, because they both had that elite bat speed. They're both left-handed. And when they get under it and drive it, you can just see that extension they have. The twitches and the athleticism of these guys, super. Scout friend of mine I was at the Fall League back in late October, and the scout friend of mine said he would have taken him 1-1, and that was a scout. That was a scout who was very heavily involved, you know, with the amateur side of it. So that was the first thing I said about him, and he's like, I would have taken him 1-1. And he said the Marlins got a complete steal.
They did. So, and, I mean, I think he fell because people were concerned, or teams were concerned about being able to sign him. Maybe, I don't know. But the Marlins, they got a steal.
Yeah. So again, that the talent, you don't want to, and I get it, because I saw young Hanley Ramirez, and you know, you can enable him a little too much. There's that fine line where you got to discipline a player. You got to make sure a player, but without stifling who they are. And you don't want to go overboard either way. But, you know, let's see that kid just kind of become who we think he could become. But, yeah, there's a real lot to like. Hey, this is a word you're going to hear me say a lot. I'm looking for impact. You know, there are a lot of nice little players out there, but I want impact. And Kahlil Watson, Eury Perez, Max Meyer, those are impact. That you win with impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking of impact, we're hoping to see a little bit more. Let's go back to the Jumbo Shrimp. JJ Bleday, a little rough start. And you know, what'd you see from JJ?
Man, so I was over there a couple times last week, and he was scuffling to start, to be sure. Now, I mean, the good thing about his start is that he's getting on base still at a decent clip. He, you know, through yesterday, I think he's at like a 310 on base percentage. So even though he's not, you know, getting the hits and whatnot, he's still finding ways to contribute. And some of it's just bad luck too. So he's got a 188 average on balls put in play, which is really, really low. That's just something, he's like hitting it right at guys. And last night he got a hold of one in Durham and he sent it deep to center. But the Bulls center fielder, Cal Stevenson, he robbed him of a 3-run homer. Would have been Bleday's first homer of the year. He went 1 for 4 last night. He had a clutch 2 RBI single in a bases loaded situation. So that was nice to see. You know, it's obviously it's a work in progress for him, which is something that you're concerned about because he hasn't been great in the Marlins system. But then when you look at how he played in the Fall League, he was awesome in the Fall League, and you were hoping some of that would sort of make its way over to Jacksonville. This season, it hasn't so much. I mean, I'm curious to see how he goes for the rest of this week because the Durham Bulls ballpark is a much more hitter-friendly ballpark than 121 Financial here in Jacksonville. Jacksonville has a gigantic ballpark. Center field in Jacksonville is 420 feet. It's the longest center field in the International League by a wide margin. Now, what's interesting there is he's actually been playing in center field a lot. So he's getting reps in that deep outfield and he's held his own. You know, he's looked comfortable. So he's getting on base for the most part. It's 5 walks. He's been hit once. So he's getting on base. You want to see those extra base hits. We haven't seen those yet. He hasn't really started producing runs yet, although he did get the 2-run single yesterday. So, but the clock is kind of ticking on JJ Bleday, I feel. What do you think?
And last year a lot was with the mechanics of his swing. Now he had that hitch coming out of Vanderbilt, even though he hit like 350 and people wanted to ignore that. But a lot of scouts I speak to were always concerned about his swing. And even last year in Pensacola, I had one scout say he saw him 5 games and he had 5 different load in 5 games. He seemed to, working with Phil Plantier, who is the Marlins, he's in the Marlins system. He is actually the Jumbo Shrimps hitting coach. At the fall league. He was working with him on just simplifying it, basically on the just load and go type of thing, rather than a lot of this movement seemed to get to him. So as long as he's got an approach, it isn't changing. Then you got to figure that's the thing. Even with the slow start, what's he 3 for 23? I think is to start the year. As long as he doesn't start changing things, and if his swing path is right, just stick with it and let's see what the results are. But it's the worst thing to do is to say, "Oh my God, let me do this or that." I will say this: I saw him in spring training, and the Marlins didn't keep him up very long, which I grant it was a shorter spring training, but you were kind of hoping he'd make a tougher decision for them. But they got him out of camp pretty fast. He was facing, I think it's Zach Thompson, a pretty good lefty pitching prospect for the Cardinals, who kind of blew him away with like 90 miles an hour up. And that's always, I heard, an area of concern. How is JJ going to handle velocity up? Especially with his hand placements and bat speed and such. So keep an eye on that. How you feel? If you're noticing, just for everyone, just see how is he doing with fastballs in the zone, especially up and potentially in. Is he catching up to that pitch? And if he is, and he's making those type of adjustments, then he's going to be fine. If not, it's going to be a little more of a struggle. But a guy who hits a real long way is his teammate Peyton Burdick, who also may not be too far away, because I think if they had to make a call tomorrow, Burdick would be in the big leagues before JJ.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Burdick has looked better offensively. He crushed one in Durham yesterday. They've got a big wall out there in left field. I think they call it like the big blue wall. I don't know what they call it, but it was big wall of some kind. But it's a long way out there, and he got all of it in the first inning, and he crushed. It was a fastball. It was up in the zone, and he turned on it. It was his second homer of the year. He's had some issues with strikeouts. He's got a 29% K rate here early on, which is something that you're worried about a little bit. But he's getting on base at a great clip, 387 on base percentage. He does have 4 walks. He's been hit once. He's got 2 homers, the 4 RBI. And the other night, one of the games against Worcester, the Red Sox, he went 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts. That was, I think it was 3 games ago. Since then, he's 3 for 8 with a homer, 2 RBIs, a walk, and he's only struck out once. So, maybe there was an adjustment there for Burdick, but he's not on the 40-man roster. But you're right. Of all of the outfield prospects that they have right now, he seems like the one that could maybe move up next or soonest.
Yeah, I think he's in line behind De La Cruz. I really do.
Yeah,
and
he played in center field last night too.
Yeah,
so
and he's Adam Duvall to me. I mean, that's the type of comp. If I had to give, Peyton Burdick is Adam Duvall. He hits the ball very far, and he impacts the ball hard, which plays at Lone Depot, which if it's not hitter friendly by any stretch, but if you get it the ball 450 feet and you could hit it over 110 miles an hour, and he's capable of both, you have a chance to succeed, even with the high K rate. But like I said, I see an Adam Duvall comp there. Man, there's so much more, David, I want to get to, but we don't want to make these too long. Before we go, really quick, because I do like to have a state of Florida theme. Your thoughts on Tristan Casas from the Red Sox system? We saw Casas play against Jacksonville. Lefty bat, really promising. He's obviously from right down here in South Florida, played at American Heritage. What did you think of him?
Yeah, so actually the Jumbo Shrimp handled Casas for the most part. They limited his production, but even the other night, I think he got a hold of one. He's a guy that Red Sox fans should be excited about, because he's definitely somebody that's going to make a difference at the major league level, and he's going to make that difference very, very soon. I feel like he's almost on a fast track heading towards Boston, because he is going to be a difference maker in that lineup. He's going to be able to produce runs. He can hit the ball a long way, and he's really, really talented. I mean, Jacksonville, the starters particularly, Meyer handled him pretty well. Braxton Garrett handled him pretty well. I even think Jordan Holloway handled him well. So like some of the Marlins starters got him, in the first turn or two. He did okay, I guess, for the series. It was a 6-game series, but for the most part, he was pretty quiet up here. But I know that that's not going to be the case for the long term. He's got a bright future ahead of him.
Yeah, he even homered. He went oppo against Jacksonville. But I also felt his timing was a little bit off. You could see it. He was getting a lot, especially from the lefties like Garrett. He was getting, those curveballs, and Brax has a plus curveball. He's going to see a lot of that from left-handers. I thought for the most part, the way he hangs in there, his approach is super good, a super hard worker, and we're pulling for him to have a really successful career. But, we're pulling for this show too. We hope that everyone out there enjoyed it. We're going to, like I said, we're going to try to do this every week for you. If you guys like it, get some feedback, but it's going to be prospects, and it's going to be a lot of this insight. David does a phenomenal job, and I look forward to doing this with you, my friend, and then carry us out.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, we're going to try and get one of these episodes up for you to enjoy every Wednesday, kind of recapping what's going on with the top Marlins prospects, the top Rays prospects. We'll touch on more for them next week. And then, as these teams play those high-end prospects like Jacksonville did with Casas and Jeter Downs and stuff like that, we'll talk about some of those guys too. So this is going to be a lot of fun, our little man on second 5R prospects report. So stay tuned in. Make sure if you're on the interwebs and you need something new to drink out of, you check out dugoutmugs.com, man on second, and get your hands on one of those. And we will see you all next time.